Now, one thing that doesn't get nearly enough attention, in my opinion, in the golf swing is what the right shoulder does. And if you don't get this right, which almost everybody doesn't, then everything else in your swing doesn't really matter. Let me explain what I mean by this. Now, if I start my downswing and my right shoulder kicks out this way, more toward the golf ball, that's that kind of steep over the top. That's what everybody starts out with. We slice across it. You know, that's that weak shot. Everybody knows that we don't want to do that. That's the over the top move. But what most people do to solve this over the top move is they think, well, I really don't like doing that. Let me just do the exact opposite and I'll drop everything underneath. Well, that right shoulder, instead of tracking down on plane, kicks underneath, left shoulder hikes up, and now all of a sudden we've taken that steep over the top. We've kept this steep angle, but we've dropped everything underneath. Well, that's steep starting the downswing and then stuck under late in the swing. That gives you those blocks way to the right. That gives you those snap hooks way to the left. And if you do either one of those, which I'd say probably 90% of people are doing one of those two incorrect right shoulder movements, golf's gonna get really hard. Now finally, I'm gonna show you what's going wrong with these. I'm also gonna show you the right way to have the shoulder track down correctly, where I can get shallow and on plane, deliver my club squarely through this golf ball, and play some great golf like the pros do. Let's go and get started. All right, so let's jump in with this right shoulder over the top first. And this is the most common one for high handicap golfers. I'm gonna set up here and go to the top of my backswing. Now from here, when I'm basically all right side dominant, this shoulder wants to kick this way, come out toward the golf ball too much. I open up, and now that puts me slicing it and pulling it over to the left. It's gonna slice back in. Well, the reason for this is we haven't learned to use the club face properly. Most players have the face too open when they first start out, because if I drag this handle toward the target, my face gets wide open, it goes to the right. So to solve that, we start coming over the top. That gets the ball to start more to the left, and when it fades back in, it's a pretty, playable shot. It's in the fairway, even though we've lost probably 50 yards of distance that we could be doing there. That's the most common one. And the most common solution to this, as I just mentioned, is not really changing any of the relationship of my club, my hands, my arms, my shoulders. I've still got that move where I'm starting down steep, but then I say, okay, I got to get everything going more this way and releasing. And what'll happen is players drop everything this way. The right shoulder gets lower. Now all of a sudden everything's more to the inside, but I'm still steep. So when you start down, that club's steep, it then shallows under late, and I get that block to the right. Now here's the real solution. Here's the one we're supposed to be going toward. When I set up to this golf ball, I want to imagine this like a plane of glass coming from my shoulders. I think Ben Hogan was probably one of the first ones to make this really popular in his book, but if you imagine there's a kind of a hole cut through my neck and shoulders, this big plane of glass coming down to my golf ball, I want to imagine that as I rotate my shoulders back and through, they stay on that plane of glass. If I break the plane of glass and kind of tilt it this way, that's that over the top. If I break the plane of glass and go this way, that's that underneath stuck position. And I really have to get to where those are rotating back and through fairly consistently. It doesn't have to be perfect. Here's what I want you to do to get a feel for that. Go ahead and put your arms out to your side, just like this, and I want you to turn back and through, and when you turn to the top of the swing, have your left hand pointing to the golf ball. As you turn to the bottom of the swing, have your right hand pointing to the golf ball. Well, you'll see when I do that, I have to get a little bit of side bend in the backswing or in the downswing to keep my shoulders tilted this way. I have to get a little bit of side bend going to the left in the backswing to keep my shoulders tilted that way. But if I just stick my hands out, I just go hand to hand. It's pretty natural. I find when people start trying to get this side bend one way or another, it gets pretty confusing. Just stick your arms out, point them to the golf ball, hold the position for 3 to 5 seconds going through, hold the position 3 to 5 seconds going back, and that's going to train the proper tilt of the shoulders. You're going to get pretty comfortable with that. Once you get that feeling, do the same thing with this golf ball or golf club, and I'm just going to feel like I get into position coming back and coming through. I like to pause here when my club is parallel with the ground in the follow through to get that kind of shoulders tilted down feeling as I'm coming through there. Same thing, I pause at the top of the back swing to feel my shoulders tilted down as I'm doing that. So let's go ahead and hit one, and you'll see how much more consistent it is, but there's still one piece missing to this that I need to go over. There we go, first swing of the day, hit it pretty solid. Felt like everything's nice and consistent there, but there's one thing that's missing, which is the hands. Now, if you're used to having this club come down steep, either over the top or underneath and getting under, or inside shoulder, getting underneath late, so it starts down steep and gets underneath. That's when I need to get this club shallowing out in the transition. Now that I have the correct shoulder angles, what I want you to feel is, as you start your downswing, I want to feel like my elbows are kind of coming out. So my left elbow, instead of being pointing down, my shoulders stay down, but my elbows, my left arm, and my right arm tucking in, start to shallow that club out. Then as I come through, now my shoulders are on plane and my club is on plane. That's what kind of ties it all together. If the shoulders don't go right first, if I don't get those shoulders on plane first, really doesn't matter what I do with my arms. Because if I'm doing this with my shoulders, there's not much I can do to put this club out here somewhere kind of floating around in space to get that working down on the same angle. If I get my shoulders out here, there's not much I can do to shallow it out. My shoulders are just too far gone in either of those scenarios. So get the shoulders working first, then start to work on those elbows, turning more under, this elbow out, this elbow in, and that's what's going to allow you to get that club finally on a really great plane in the golf swing. Let's go ahead and hit one more here. There we go, nice and solid again. And again, once you get that down, you don't really have to, hit tons and tons of balls. It's going to be fairly consistent to get those results. Now there's one final piece to this. You want to throw it all in together. We'll get the shoulders working right so that now we can get the club on plane. The final piece, and if you'll remember what I talked about where this all started, is not being able to get the club squared up. Most players never get past having this club face open, and then to solve for that, we either swing more left or we flip the club, or we lose that lag and flip it to try to square the face up. You'll see when I flip the club, it squares the face up or closes the face. As I do this, it opens the face. We have to learn to properly use the wrist to square that face up, and that's what the pros are doing. That's why when you're watching these pros, you're gonna see so many of them with that left wrist in this bowed position, which is very difficult for most players to feel. I have a really easy drill that's gonna walk you through exactly how to get that feeling once and for all. I call it the tennis racket drill. It's very intuitive, and I found a lot of players really enjoy this drill because it gets them in that pro impact position with their wrist angles that they've been wanting to do for a long time. So let's add that final piece. We got the shoulders working, we got the club plane working. The final piece is to put the club face on it so everything is looking like what you're seeing with the pros. I'm gonna play a preview of that video here in just 1 second. All you need to do is just go ahead and click the card that pops up on the screen. If you don't see the card that pops up on the screen, don't worry about it. Go down to the description below, click the link there, and you'll get instant access to this video. I can't wait to share with you the tennis racket drill. Let's get this whole thing knocked out. Let's get your swing looking like $1,000,000 and feeling really solid too. Let's go and get started. Good player problems. We're going to talk about shallowing that club shaft out as we're starting down, as we're doing this rotating of the face that we worked on in the last video. As we start this downswing, what you'll see with basically all of the top players is instead of coming kind of over the top and letting the hands come out away from their body, letting the club come out away from their body, again coming down steep into the ball and then having to open up, kind of fillet open the face and add loft to it. The flattening of the shaft should happen as soon as we start down. So as we start this downswing, what we want to have happening here, you can imagine that if I draw a line from the hosel of my club up through my right elbow, that's my swing plane line, my elbow plane. As I go to the top of the swing, I'm going to be slightly above that. And then as I start down, I want my hands to start to shallow out. I want the club to shallow out inside of this elbow plane. And at the same time, I'm going to be